So it feels like for the last little bit of time I've been plagued by this feeling of not really knowing what to make. It feels like I don't know exactly what direction to go in with regards to making videos. It feels like I don't know exactly what to do to move forward. And at times it feels like the ideas don't flow as easily as they used to. Or in other words, I guess really what I'm talking about is writer's block, artist block, whatever you want to call it, which is a thing that I don't really believe in, not really, but now that I'm experiencing it, I'm having second thoughts. I think that whenever you first start making art, whenever you first start doing whatever it is you're doing, writing, making music, making art, like I said, I think regardless of what it is you're doing, I think that whenever you first start doing something, you have this immediacy to your work. I think something deep within you just tells you to make art, and so you go forward and you do it, and you oftentimes have something to say. You have something in you that needs to come out. And there are certain things I've made, there are certain videos I've made that I can point to and I can say, yeah, I had something to say with this video. The most obvious example I can think of is the first Signalis video I did, Signalis and the Dissolution of Self. That was a video that was on my mind for weeks before I made it, and I worked on the script for a long time, and I honestly think it's the best piece of writing I've done on this channel. But I feel like I had something to get off my chest. I feel like I had some ideas to share. And before I made that video, I hadn't seen anyone talk about the game in the same way that I talked about it. And so I needed to say that. I needed to say what I said in that video. And with the second video on this channel is Silent Hill Too Weird to Be Scary. That's a video that I had in my mind for a long time before making it because it was my first attempt at filming anything on a green screen. And of course, whenever you enter a new field or you start working in a new style, it's scary, and so you have a lot of hesitation when it comes to doing that, when it comes to beginning. But still, that video is Silent Hill 4 Too Weird to Be Scary. That was something that I worked on for a long time. I made notes extensively. I had a lot of thoughts about it. I spent an entire day preparing the green screen and figuring out how to use it. And whenever I began filming that video, I started at like midnight or something because I had been working on preparing the green screen all day and trying to figure out how to use it. But then I knew that the first time I filmed it, it was bad. And so I immediately, right after filming it the first time, I immediately just filmed it again. And all the shots that you see in that video are from that second time I filmed it. And it feels like with that video, I had things I wanted to talk about. I had things I wanted to say. But I think naturally, as you make stuff, then it will feel like you don't have as much to say because you've already said so much. I've been doing a video a week for like a year or two now, and I've put out 84 videos, I think. And not only have I put out 84 videos, I've put out 84 videos in like a bunch of different styles. I don't stick to just one thing, I just go and do whatever the frick I want. And so because of that, I've kind of touched on a lot of things that I'm interested in already. And so I think that as you keep on working, as your back catalog grows, as your portfolio grows, then I think it becomes more of a challenge to figure out what you want to say next. Because on one hand, you don't want to repeat yourself, but on another hand, if you've already done a bunch of work, then it's hard to not touch on things that you've already said. And I think that's okay. I was going to make another video about the idea of repeating yourself or treading the same territory that you've already gone through, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think that if you tread the same territory and you come to the exact same conclusions, I think that can feel pointless, but I think that touching on things that you've already touched on in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It kind of goes back to the saying that no man steps in the same river twice. Even though you may be covering a topic that you've already covered before, you are a different person, and so inevitably I think you will bring a different mindset to whatever it is you're talking about. And so I think there's this question in my mind right now: what can you do to defeat this feeling of writer's block, artist block, whatever you want to call it? What can you do to defeat this feeling of not knowing what exactly to do next? And I think that we should look to what other people have said about it. And I forget who said this, but there's a saying, no input equals no output. Basically, the idea with that is that you need to be constantly and consistently taking in new things, new ideas. You need to be exposing yourself to other people's art in order to have something to say. There's a video that I think of a lot where it's an interview with the director Kurosawa, I think is his name. And in the video, he is asked the question, what would you recommend to anyone who wants to direct films? And he says that he would say two things to people who want to direct. First, you should write. He says that if you want to make movies, you should write screenplays because screenplays are cheap. All that you need is paper and a pen. Even if you just want to direct movies, you should still understand how to tell a story. And then the second thing he recommends is that you should read, and you should read widely. And I think this applies not just to people who are interested in doing film, but people who are interested in art in general, people who are interested in creating in general. And he says that you shouldn't just read contemporary stuff, you should read the classics. He says that you should read the Russians, so you should read like Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. And he says that you should read these deeper works, great works of literature that struggle with the major human struggles, I guess. Because in order to create something, you must draw from a deep reservoir within, I think is how he words it. Basically, if you want to put something out, then you need something inside of yourself to say in order to put that out. And so the idea is that these great works of literature will stir up feelings within you, and that through that, you will then have something to output into the world. And I would expand his advice a little bit. I would say that if you want to do anything creative, you should read, of course, but you shouldn't just read. You should pay attention to all works of art. You should pay attention to visual arts, to paintings, to sculptures. You should watch the great movies, the great films. You should listen to classic albums and classic work and things that are perceived as great by other people. Because the thing is that the crowd is not always right, but sometimes crowds are right. Sometimes whenever everybody says that a work of art is great, it actually is great. And so I think that by exposing yourself to work outside of yourself, that is kind of how you stir up feelings within yourself that will then allow you to create art. And of course, I don't think that you can just pay attention to art. I think you have to pay attention to life. And I think that you as a person need to be continually growing. I think that the world is really big. I think that life has a lot to it. I think that even if you lived for 1,000 years, you wouldn't be able to come across everything that life has to offer. And I think there are some ideas that challenge this. You know, I've been reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, rereading it. And in it, he presents a really interesting idea that if you lived for 40 years or 1,000 years, you'll still see the same stuff. And I think that there's a certain degree of truth to that. I do think that you see a lot of patterns, especially within people. Everyone struggles with a lot of the same things. Peoples across time struggle with the same things, which is why we still connect with works of literature that were written 1,000 or 2,000 years ago or whatever else. It feels like people always seem to be surprised whenever they read Shakespeare and they're like, wow, I can still relate to the characters. And it's like, yeah, because people haven't changed that much. Things are different, you know, we have the internet and we have technology, but at the core of it, we still struggle with a lot of the same things. We still struggle with our fear of death, our fear of love, or wanting to be loved, or not being loved. We still struggle with the idea of time. We struggle with the idea of posterity and what people will think of us after we're gone. And these are all ideas that people across time have struggled with. Human beings at their core are not that different. And so I think that if you don't know what to say, if you don't have any ideas, if you're unsure of where to go with your art, I think that is the best thing you can do, is pay attention to what other people have done with their art. And don't just be a passive consumer. Don't just watch a movie and then, you know, walk out of the theater and that's it. Actually think about the stuff that you've read or think about the paintings you saw. And so I think that looking at other people's art or paying attention to your real life struggles or problems or good things that are happening, I think all that can rejuvenate you and will allow you to make your art in the future. In spite of everything I've just said though, I still find myself struggling a little bit with this feeling of not exactly knowing where to go next. And I'm recording this one on a Wednesday, it's gonna go up on Sunday, but I have like 5 or 6 other videos recorded and I could just easily make those. But I wanted to stick these ideas out there. I wanted to document my struggle with not exactly knowing where to go next. And it's not even that I don't have any ideas, because I have a lot of ideas, but rather it's this feeling that nothing is calling out to me like some of my past works have. There isn't anything in my mind now that has the same immediacy of needing to be made like this Ignalis video that I mentioned earlier. And you know, I can look around my space and I can point to 1,000 different things I could talk about. I'm looking at my bookshelf now and, you know, I have like a copy of Tender is the Flesh that I've been meaning to talk about for a long time. You know, I could talk about Crime and Punishment, I could talk about Watchmen, I could do some Hellblazer videos. I could talk about the Umbrella Academy or some Irish myths, talk about Dracula, maybe I'll do that. That would be really cool, actually. I think I should actually do that. I should make a video about Dracula. I could use it as an excuse to dress up like a vampire again. But yeah, no, there's this just feeling where it's like, I don't know exactly where to go next. And like I said, if I look around, then I can just see all these different potential directions. I could talk about this, I could talk about that. But at the same time, there isn't that immediate thing calling out to me. And so I think that's kind of what I'm missing. And I think that is what people are referring to whenever they refer to like writer's block. Because sometimes you have an idea and it just eats away at you and you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. And then other times, that's not really the case. Other times it just feels like life, you know, it just feels like from one day to the next, there isn't really anything special. And I think that's a hard thing to deal with. And this is not my first time experiencing this feeling, you know, not by a long shot. But I think it's probably the first time that I've really wanted to document it and talk about it. Looking at my videography, there are videos that I've been more excited to make and videos that I've been less excited to make. But I think that in spite of that, even if you're not 100% enthusiastic about what you're making, I still think it's worth it to keep on making something. I said this before, but you can't make anything perfect. You can only make imperfect things. So if you have a choice between making something that you're not 100% enthusiastic about or not doing anything, I think it's better to do the former. I've been doing a video a week for however long, and I think I'm going to keep on trying to do that because there's this impulse within me that's like, dang, you know, if I don't have anything urgent to say, maybe I should wait. Maybe I should, you know, stick out a video every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. Or I think to myself, maybe I should only put out a video if I feel like it's urgent, you know, and whenever I feel like I have something to say. But as I've said before, and as other people have said, I think that creativity is a kind of muscle. I think that if you wait for the perfect idea or the perfect opportunity, then you won't receive it. But I think that if you just put in the work, and I think if you just work a little bit each day, then I think that you will pass through the phases of listlessness, I guess. I think that if I just keep on working, then inevitably I will pass through this phase of not knowing exactly what to do, and I think that I will stumble my way into having something major and urgent to say again. And ironically, this video that is entirely about not knowing what to say, it's about writer's block, this has been the most urgent video that I felt I've needed to make in a bit. So there's your daily dose of irony, I guess. One last thing I wanted to touch on is the idea of staying in your lane as opposed to expanding outward. I think there are a lot of people who pick one thing and they just do that for their entire career. Mike Mignola, who's the guy who does Hellboy, he has said before that he figured out what he likes to draw. He likes drawing like skeletons and weird Lovecraftian things, and then he's just done that for the last 30 years. I think there are people who are really good at doing one thing and who just want to stick to that one thing. And then I think there are other people who have a bunch of different interests and who want to cover all of them. Trent Reznor is an example of this. He's someone who's continuing to evolve each and every year. Every Nine Inch Nails record sounds different from the last. One of my favorite singers, Greg Puciato, I think fits into this category as well because he's covered a bunch of different styles throughout his career. He does loud screaming metal, and then he does softer, more R&B influenced electronic music. He's done more industrial stuff and more punk stuff, and so he has a really cool career. And so I think if it's not immediately clear by looking at my videography, I've always wanted to fall into the latter category. I've always wanted to cover a bunch of different things. But the reason I bring up this idea of focusing in on one thing, one style, one genre, or being sporadic and focusing on a bunch of different other things, the reason I bring this up is because I think that you can experience writer's block because of both. I think that if you're focused in on one thing or one style, I think that can very easily and quickly get stale, at least for me. And so I think you can experience writer's block that way, but I think the opposite is true. I think that if you're sporadic, if you feel this need to do different things each and every time, I think that can cause you to feel a sense of writer's block or artist block because you don't know what to do next. As I was saying, if you've touched on everything, if you've covered everything, then I think that can be imprisoning in its own sort of way. It goes back to that idea that Alexander the Great wept because there were no more worlds to conquer. So I think if you're doing a bunch of different things and then you run out of ideas, then I think at that point you can go, man, I don't really know what to do. But really, as I was saying, I think that the best thing that you can do if you are uncertain is to just focus on other people's art or focus in on your own internal life. Or really, I don't know why I said or. I think that you should do those things in tandem. You should do them together. And really, even if you're having a great time making things and you're not feeling uninspired, if you're feeling perfectly inspired, then I think you should still pay attention to other people's art and pay attention to what's going on in your own life. I think that's how you defeat writer's block, but I don't think that it will immediately be defeated. I think it takes time. And so really, in closing, I think that if you don't know what to do next, the best thing you can do is just move forward and hope for the best. Even if it means that you'll repeat yourself, even if it means that you'll make something less than stellar, even if it means that you'll make something that no one will care about. I think that the best thing that you can do is just move forward and move through the space that you're in. I think that if you have writer's block and you decide to not write, I think that will make the writer's block last for longer. And I think that if you have this uncertainty, if you don't know what exactly to make, I think that if you push through it and you just try to make something anyway, then I think you'll get through it just fine. At least that's what I'm hoping for with this video. And if all else fails, if you really have no clue what to write about or what to talk about, you can talk about the idea of not knowing what to talk about. So here we are. So thank you for watching. Have a nice night, and goodbye. Good luck with your art. Good luck with all your creativity and art and artistic projects and non-artistic projects. I wish you the best. So I guess we're ending it there. So thanks for watching. Good night. Bye.
Living on my McAlister.